President Donald Trump currently leads Vice President Kamala Harris on PolyMarket, the world's largest prediction market for the 2024 presidential election. As you can see, he leads by 9.4 percentage points against Vice President Kamala Harris. In fact, he's at one of his highest points in the last 2 months, while Harris is at her lowest point essentially since she joined this presidential race. Now, PolyMarket is uniquely accurate in predicting presidential elections because people actually have to put their money in to have their voices heard. While people can lie with their mouths, they're generally not super inclined to lie with their wallets because they don't want to be hurt financially. Now, having established that, let's fill in the presidential election map by each state based on the PolyMarket predictions for each one of these states. Starting off here with the safe states for former President Donald Trump. These are states that PolyMarket says has at least a 95% chance of going to that party. Donald Trump will carry the states of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 1st and 3rd districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, Missouri, and the state of South Carolina by a safe margin. Now, none of these characterizations are particularly surprising. We all knew that these are states that Donald Trump are expected to carry for the 2024 presidential election. Now for Kamala Harris. Again, there isn't something that's super surprising, but Washington, Oregon, California, DC, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, as well as the state of New York, Maine's 1st congressional district, Illinois, and the state of Colorado are considered safe. Additionally, I did miss the state of Hawaii that is also considered safe on this map as well. Kamala Harris is up to 191 electoral college votes, while Donald Trump is at 122. Now going for Donald Trump and his likely states. Well, there's nothing too surprising here, so likely is generally deemed as between 80% and 95%. So these are states that are heavily anticipated to go in one direction or the other, but they're not necessarily considered safe states. The first of these states is the state of Alaska, which does give Kamala Harris about a 7% chance of winning, which is still quite slim, but not necessarily a safe margin here for Donald Trump. Now, another 2 states that generally give about a 7% chance for Kamala Harris to win and a 93% chance for Donald Trump are Iowa and Ohio. These are not states that are anticipated to be competitive at all in the upcoming election, but they're slightly more competitive because historically they're states that are generally more democratic, and as a result, they're not necessarily considered safe for Donald Trump, but rather a likely margin. Now next up, going to the state of Texas for the electoral college votes. Nothing too surprising here. Donald Trump is expected to win the state of Texas by a likely margin, and PolyMarket does reflect that. Now going to Florida here, nothing too surprising as well. Florida also gives Donald Trump a 91% share. In other words, he has around a 91% chance of winning the state, at least according to PolyMarket. So right now, Florida is in the likely Republican column. Finally, Maine's 2nd congressional district are all considered in the likely Donald Trump column, boosting up now to 219 electoral college votes, now ahead of Kamala Harris. Now first up is the state of Nevada. In 2020, Joe Biden won the state of Nevada by 2.4%, and in 2016, this was the only one of the 7 competitive states currently shaded in gray to go in favor of Hillary Clinton. All the remaining 6 of the competitive states all back Donald Trump. So in theory, the state has the strongest democratic fundamentals of any of the 6 competitive states. However, Kamala Harris does have a struggle in the state of Nevada, specifically with Hispanic voters, which is about 20% of the electorate in the state. Back in 2016, Hillary Clinton won Hispanic voters by essentially 40%. In 2020, Biden only won this group of voters by 26%, and that kind of resulted in a problem for Joe Biden in a lot of Hispanic communities, specifically in Texas in the Rio Grande Valley, in Florida in Miami-Dade County, as well as in parts of the state of Nevada, specifically Clark County, which trended 1.4% in favor of the Republican Party. This time round, though, that could be a big problem for Kamala Harris if she keeps slipping with Hispanic voters. Right now, she's at about D+19, and that could be problematic because, again, Hillary Clinton did not win the election with a D+40 margin with Hispanic voters. It could be difficult for Kamala Harris to win if she's at D+19. Now, that being said, demographic shifts have been significant, and Democrats are doing a bit better with white voters this time round. However, in the state of Nevada, that could prove especially problematic. Now, if you look at the current betting markets for the state of Nevada, it doesn't look too good for Democrats. Now, I know it does say that Democrats have a 51 to 50 chance of actually winning the state, or 50 to 49% chance, but in theory, Democrats should be doing a bit better than this if they actually want to win the state. And Harris has been leading by a little bit in the state of Nevada in the past month or so. However, she is down at the narrowest margin it has ever been in the state of Nevada for about 1 to 2 months already, which is not a great sign for the Kamala Harris campaign. Nevertheless, Nevada is still considered tilt in favor of Kamala Harris. Now, the state of Arizona. Arizona is kind of a must-win state for Donald Trump if he wants to win this year's election. If Kamala Harris wins the state, she has an 87% chance of victory. That being said, if Trump wins the state, he also has a 71% chance of winning this year's presidential election. Now, this time round, though, the state of Arizona is kind of going heavily in favor of Donald Trump. He has a 67% chance of winning the state, to Democrats at 34%, or essentially a 2-to-1 margin. Now, when Kamala Harris kind of became the presumptive Democratic nominee, the state was about 50-50. It never went in favor of Democrats, but again, this was a very competitive race. Now it's down to about 67-34 in favor of the Republicans, which is quite a significant shift. Now, again, Kamala Harris is someone who is much more liberal, at least in theory, compared to Joe Biden. Joe Biden was able to run a moderate image, where he was like, I'm the moderate candidate. Donald Trump is the one who disrespected John McCain, yada yada yada, and therefore, you should vote for me. However, Kamala Harris doesn't have that argument, because she is much more left-wing, at least in 2020. Sure, she says that she's not going to ban fracking, that she's going to kind of enforce some of these tougher on immigration stances, but that kind of contradicts what she said in 2020 in the state of Arizona, which is a border state, a state where there's a lot of moderate voters, are going to be pretty negative towards those comments and not super receptive to Kamala Harris, resulting in her kind of dropping in some of the state as well as the support across the state. So right now in the state of Arizona, based on the PolyMarket's percentages, it does go as a lean state in favor of Donald Trump, boosting him up to 230 electoral college votes. Now, next up is the state of Georgia. Georgia is kind of similar to the state of Arizona in the way that the state trended towards Joe Biden in 2020 and kind of gave Democrats the margin of victory there because Joe Biden was the perceived moderate, and a lot of these suburban areas heavily trended in favor of Joe Biden. You're talking about 16% shifts in Henry County, 14% shifts in Forsyth County, maybe 12% shifts in Paulding County, and you kind of see those type of shifts across the state of Georgia in the Atlanta suburbs. However, again, the problem with Kamala Harris, she's definitely not as moderate as Joe Biden, or definitely not perceived as that. Joe Biden's not necessarily a moderate, but he was perceived as someone who was willing to work across the aisle, and that's not the public image of Kamala Harris, which is kind of why she's kind of slipping in the state of Georgia. At one point, again, the state of Georgia was kind of competitive. 54-47 was when essentially Kamala Harris became the presumptive Democratic nominee, and Democrats were kind of enjoying a type of the trend of going up, and now the state is showing its shift towards the Republican Party. Donald Trump is at 64 cents per share, while Kamala Harris is at 37 cents. Again, that is a lean characterization for Donald Trump and the second flip he has on this map. Next up is the state of North Carolina. Now, North Carolina is a state that Donald Trump was able to win by 1.3%, or roughly 80,000 votes or 70,000 votes in the 2020 presidential election. Now, in other words, this definitely is more of a difficult state for Kamala Harris, because if Joe Biden was not able to win the state in 2020, where the conditions were essentially perfect for him, he had pretty broad black voter support, and the economy wasn't doing well thanks to COVID, and he still wasn't able to win the state of North Carolina, it's going to be really difficult to see Kamala Harris actually winning the state. Now, she's putting a play for the state, but right now, according to PolyMarket, it certainly does not look too good for Kamala Harris in the state. Now, the state kind of tightened back in around late September, early October, but now it has reversed to again about a 25% margin in favor of Donald Trump, which is again a lean characterization. Again, so far, this map kind of fits in with my projection. I would have to say Nevada as tilt Republican, but so far so good. There's nothing too shocking about this map, and right now Donald Trump does appear to be the favored. According to this map, he only needs to win 1 of the 3 Rust Belt states, while Kamala Harris needs to win all 3. Now we go to just 3 states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. The red wall that gave Donald Trump the 2016 presidential election, and the blue wall that gave Joe Biden the 2020 presidential election. And starting off here with the state of Wisconsin, the smallest of the 3 Rust Belt states, but nevertheless crucial to Kamala Harris, because any one of these 3 states going to Donald Trump, including the state of Wisconsin, would give Trump the presidency. Now first off, in Wisconsin right now, PolyMarket has generally shown Democrats ahead in the state of Wisconsin, oftentimes by pretty substantial margins. However, recently, just in the last couple of days ago, Kamala Harris has been dropping in the state of Wisconsin, as well as essentially across the board. And as you can see right now, the Republican share is slightly ahead of the Democratic share, 51% to 50%. Now that's still a very competitive margin, and that's kind of because of the fact that Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, does kind of border the state of Wisconsin, and you could see that Tim Walz brings some benefits to Kamala Harris in some of the more working class areas of the state. We're talking Lafayette County, Grant County, Crawford County, Richland County, Vernon County, the areas that kind of border the state of Minnesota, and areas that traditionally vote blue, that voted for Donald Trump in 2020. And this was kind of the perception for a long time until recently, where PolyMarket kind of showing the state of Wisconsin going in favor of the Republican Party, giving the state to Donald Trump. This is kind of a must-win state here for Kamala Harris. If you go to the FiveThirtyEight website, if you go and give the state of Wisconsin to Donald Trump, he has a 83% chance of winning the presidency. Now, if you give the state to Kamala Harris as well, you can see that she's also at 82% chance of winning the presidency, so it's definitely a very crucial state to go for either side, and if Trump wins the state, that is pretty much game over here for Kamala Harris. Now, another state that is essentially a must-win state here for Kamala Harris and not really Donald Trump is the state of Michigan. If Michigan goes for Donald Trump, this election is over. He has an 85% chance of victory, and I'd argue it's closer to 90-something%, because if Michigan goes to the Republican Party, so does the state of Wisconsin, and so does the state of Pennsylvania, because these 3 states generally vote together, and Michigan is the bluest of the 3 states. Now, Michigan, again, if you look at it from a historical perspective, a couple weeks or a couple months ago, Democrats were the heavy favored in the state of Michigan. At one point just a few weeks ago, the Democratic share was all the way up to 68%, and it stayed kind of like that for a few weeks, and generally across the last 2 months or so, this has been a state that has been heavily in favor of the Democratic Party. However, again, recently, the state of Michigan right now, 51 to 50 in favor of the Republican Party, suggesting that voters and as well as gamblers, these people who put money into these websites, now starting to believe that the Republican Party is the favorite to win the state of Michigan, which is again quite a significant sign in favor of Donald Trump. The state of Michigan right now in the tilt Republican column. Now going to the state of Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania, unlike the states of Wisconsin and Michigan, has generally been considered a pretty competitive state on PolyMarket. This was a state that voted for Joe Biden by just about 80,000 votes in the 2020 presidential election, and you do see that Kamala Harris is probably going to end up faltering in some of the more working class areas across the state, like Pike County, like Monroe County, or Northampton County. Now, this was a state that was again about 50-50, but now, according to PolyMarket, Donald Trump has a 53% chance of retaining the state. As you can see, it has been kind of fluctuating. Early on here, the Democratic Party had a significant edge, as Kamala Harris kind of took the Democratic nomination, and then kind of fluctuated, and now Trump is at one of his highest points he's ever been around the past couple of days or so. So as you can see, the state of Pennsylvania now going in the tilt Republican column, thus bringing up Donald Trump to 306 Electoral College votes and Kamala Harris to 232. In conclusion to this video, Donald Trump's chances of retaining the presidency and winning it for a second non-consecutive term is definitely surging. Now, just a few weeks ago, for example, in Michigan, you can see that the Democratic share was very high. You go to the state of Wisconsin, it was also around 61-62%, and now it does seem like that the entirety of the election has kind of flipped, and now Donald Trump is a favorite to win essentially all of the competitive states, except the state of Nevada, where it's essentially 51-50. Now again, the election is still very competitive according to the betting markets. However, Donald Trump is still the clear favorite at this point in time to win the presidential election, at least according to the betting markets, which was not the theory just about a week or two ago. Anyways, thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.